Well, hello everybody. Welcome to a new e-group series, especially for Equippers West London. We are going to be taking the next 4 or so weeks to look at a key passage of scripture that has really shaped a lot of where Equippers West London has come from and also a lot of where Equippers West London is going. You may be familiar with this passage. It's Isaiah 49. And as I said, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to take a look at this specific chapter. We're going to break it down into little sections and really start to work out, what does this chapter mean? What did it mean for the people of God back in time then? What did it mean for us today? And we thought, who better to help us unpack, to unravel one section of the Bible than Pastor Steve Graham. So Pastor Steve, welcome. Thank you so much.
Isaiah might have been better.
That's true. He wasn't available, sadly. So we've got Pastor Stephen to help us out. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take, like as I said, the next 4 weeks to take a look at this. We thought a good place to start would actually be to understand the whole, maybe the book of Isaiah itself. Right. Before we dive straight into Isaiah 49, it's probably best to work out where we've come from, where we're at, what this whole passage and this whole area of scripture even really is all about. So Pastor Steve, why don't we kick off there? Isaiah, what's he on about? What's it all about?
Okay. Well, just to start where you started, I mean, Isaiah 49 is a key passage for Equippers. Yeah. The logo of the arrow comes from that. But you're right, part of the principle is like understand any passage within the book. The books are inspired. So Isaiah's a pretty significant book. Yeah. It's kind of like the big start of this whole section of the prophets in the Old Testament. And 66 chapters, massive book that really sets a whole scene to think about the big picture of God. I love the fact different books work in different ways. Proverbs is really practical, down to earth. This is how you do life. Isaiah is these incredible big picture kind of visions that just want to grab people's imagination.
Yeah.
And the book of Isaiah actually did grab people's imagination. I just looked up before. In the New Testament, it's the most cited or alluded to book than any other book apart from the book of Psalms. Wow. So it actually grabbed the imagination of Jesus and of the apostles. Like, this is how we understand what God's doing. Yeah. So it's a really significant book. In fact, the books are inspired, the chapters and verses people put in, but in the providence of God, Isaiah's ended up being like a bit of a little mini Bible. It's 66 chapters, there's 66 books in the Bible. Isaiah kind of has 2 calls. The first call to more of a judgment ministry is the first 39 chapters, but like the 39 books of the Old Testament. And then in Isaiah 40, he has the second call that's all about comfort my people, which leads to Isaiah 40 to 66, which parallels like the 27 books of the New Testament. So it's like a mini Bible.
Yeah.
And so we're really looking at a key chapter in that second section of Isaiah 40 to 66, which is really the message of comfort, of hope, of, hey, God is coming to bring salvation, God is coming to bring redemption, and he's raising up some key people to do this. And so it's not kind of surprising that grabbed people's imagination.
Yeah. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what Isaiah, what he was doing, like what was happening at the time he was doing those things, if that makes sense? Because it will help us, like you've talked about the comfort and that kind of thing. Yeah. It will help us probably to understand why people needed to hear that at that time.
Well, the prophets were already prophesying during a bad time when Israel was heading towards judgment. But at a certain point, they then looked beyond that to the point of what God was going to do after that. And that's really the message was to Israel, hey, comfort is coming. And it's all the words of the New Testament. Hey, I'm bringing you, Isaiah 40, I'm bringing you good news. God is arriving and he's going to set you free. Yeah. So the immediate context was, Israel's going to get set free. But kind of there was a sense, like for the rest of the Old Testament, like it kind of almost fizzled out. It wasn't quite as dramatic. So 400 years later, they're still feeling like, man, that message of Isaiah is coming still in a greater way than we've seen yet. And so it's not surprising, the New Testament starts, Mark starts by quoting Isaiah 40, a voice in the wilderness. That's literally Isaiah 40 verse 3, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare a way for the Lord. So they're like, man, that whole dream of Isaiah is now kicking in. Yeah. what we had a taste of in terms of coming back from exile, now we're experiencing through the message of Jesus.
Yeah, amazing. And then when we get to kind of Isaiah 49 itself, and the kind of section of chapters in Isaiah that this is in, this is within the kind of, that you call it like the servant song kind of area, right?
So part of that 40 to 66 is this predominantly message of comfort, of restoration, salvation. And a key part of that is what's called 4 servant songs. So we're often familiar with the concept of a Messiah, a royal Messiah, a king from David's line. And Israel was looking forward to that. But Isaiah has this other figure which starts, so it's Isaiah 42, 1 to 4, then Isaiah 49, 1 to 6, Isaiah 54 to 11, and then the famous passage Isaiah 52 into 53, which talks about this person called the servant of the Lord. And it's an interesting figure. And really before Jesus, no one had really worked out how these different figures fit together, the royal Messiah and the suffering servant. Because obviously the Messiah comes to be king and rule, and the servant actually ends up suffering. So they're quite different. And it's really the mystery of the cross that we would discover a servant king who conquered by death. I mean, that's quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
But in terms of this whole message of hope, of salvation, of restoration, it's realizing there's this key person, this servant of God, who's going to come and bring that. So that starts in Isaiah 42. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. And then some people add a 5th servant song on Isaiah 61. It doesn't actually use the language of servant, but that's that famous passage. Again, Jesus quotes in Luke 4 as the mandate for his ministry. You know, the Spirit of the Lord is on me because the Lord's anointed me. Do those things like bind the brokenhearted, bind them up, freedom for the captives. So yeah, it's kind of in this picture of God's doing these amazing things. This key person is going to come and be part of this incredible good news is actually the word that's used, where we get the word gospel and evangelism, comes from Isaiah 40 to 66.
Wow, that's great. And so that kind of sets the scene for us when it comes to what was happening in Isaiah's time and what was kind of, I guess, promised for the people of God. I guess probably the next thing to ask is, we're here now in 2025. We've been handed this 66 chapter book, which is pretty long. Some of it's really hopeful, really uplifting. Other bits are maybe more confusing or trickier to read. How do we even approach this kind of book, or how do we begin to unpack it or to understand what it is that's in there?
Yeah, well, I think the bottom line is the Bible all comes to a center in Jesus. So now we understand, Jesus was this servant who came and has opened the way now. And it wasn't just a message for one nation. It was for all people. It wasn't just a message about a political or military liberation. It was about being set free from sin and death and oppression. And it's like, now we understand that we live on the other side of Jesus having accomplished this. And then the sense this thing is spreading, we'll have a look at that over the next few weeks. It's like, man, this is what we're part of now, this movement that's spreading, that people are getting set free, that this is going bigger than we ever thought. And we need to find ourselves in that story. Yeah,
being able to read this, and this part of the Bible through that lens of Jesus, of knowing where the story is heading is such a great way to see it, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Mark starts by quoting Isaiah 40. Jesus starts his ministry by quoting Isaiah 61. They clearly interpreted what was happening for them in light of Isaiah, but they saw themselves as the fulfillment of that.
As part of that story. Yeah, that's great. And then let's talk about, finally, just to finish off, Isaiah 49 itself. What kind of things can we expect to see from this passage? Are we going to be able to discover or look forward to? Or what kind of things should we just keep an eye out for as we go through it over the next couple of weeks?
I think part of, how to read Proverbs is just real practical. How to read Isaiah is let it capture your imagination.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
And so, I think when you read through it, you see things like just God's passion to bring salvation, the confidence of the people of God. And we haven't quite talked about that yet, but, that that Jesus was the servant, but now we're in Jesus and we're now co-laboring with him to further this. So this sense of, man, God's had eternal purpose. Man, God raises up people who have a confidence about this. That there's incredible freedom that comes for people. Even, the tenderness of the heart of God. See, I've engraved you on the palms of my hands. The sense of this thing is going big, like this. The room's too small now. So it's almost just read and let some of those themes just like, oh my goodness, this thing is amazing. This thing is so much bigger than I realized.
And I think that's a great place to finish and a great place to learn. One of the things that Nicola and I have been doing is we've been reading this passage and looking at it in different versions, or leaving it for a while and coming back to it, using our imagination and keep on going. Oh my word! Have you seen this bit? Have you seen that bit? Because there's so much to it. It's really, really worth a read. And so that's going to be our kind of encouragement or our challenge to you tonight in your e-group. Get yourself a Bible, find Isaiah 49, and have a read through it. And maybe you want to just chat tonight. What stands out to you in this passage? There is loads of different things, different themes, different items that kind of come up. And so have a read and then have a discussion tonight. What pops up to you in Isaiah 49? We have got 3 more fantastic weeks as we dip into this specific chapter. So join us again next time and have a brilliant discussion tonight.